Okay, let's just turn towards the second part of the title of the retreat, which is A Spiritual Path. For many people today, a spiritual path is very related to that section in bookstores, which is no longer called spirituality, but is more often called self-help, or well-being, or body, mind, spirit. So this is, I think, a modern take on what we mean by a spiritual path, and we should listen to that, and we can learn something from it, and there's some truth in it. So for many people today, a spiritual path is really about enhancing your personal well-being, your mental and physical health, and for many people, a spiritual path is going to involve some physical, maybe dietary or exercise, or something that's going to be good for you, make you feel better as a whole person in general. And of course, spiritual life, spiritual health, spiritual well-being, whatever that really means, and physical well-being are not opposed. We are a whole person, after all. The Greek idea of the human being was dualistic, body and mind. And the mind was the important thing, even though they had great admiration for a good body and a healthy body and a beautiful body. But the most important thing philosophically for them was the mind. So the mind was sort of housed in the body, like a ghost in a machine. But what really mattered was when the body fell away and the mind was released, was liberated from the body. And I think there's still quite a lot of that dualism in our thinking sometimes. But the biblical idea of the person is quite different. It's that we are, in fact, Trinitarian or triadic. We're three interrelating spheres of consciousness and experience, where we are a body, of course, but we can't separate the body from the mind. We know how much the mind is influenced by the body, and vice versa. But we are also, in the biblical vision, made up of spirit, the spiritual dimension. And the spiritual dimension is our dimension for transcendence. We can transcend ourselves through the spiritual. In other words, we can take the attention off ourselves, transcend the ego, and really take off. We can flourish. This is where we are really experiencing the fullness of being. And it's not because we have jettisoned or rejected either the mind or the body, but the body and the mind come into a new harmony and relationship in the transcendent realm of the spirit. So, but the modern consciousness still struggles with the meaning of this. And we tend to concentrate in our education and in our medicine primarily upon the dualistic model of the body and the mind. In The Cloud of Unknowing, this little book on Christian meditation written in the 14th century in England, he has a section, yes I can quote, I think. He has a section where he talks about you've got to keep healthy if you want to meditate. So look after yourself. And because if you're sick and you've got a cold or you've got a temperature, it's going to be very difficult to meditate, isn't it? You don't feel like meditating when you're lying in bed with with feeling sick. So he says, look after yourself physically so that you can meditate. Well, our approach is rather the opposite. We meditate in order to feel better, to feel healthier, to reduce our blood pressure, and to feel better. I'm just trying to find the section. What's that? No, I'm trying to find my own notes here about the cloud says about the effect of meditation on the body, and what he says is there's that word somewhere, but I can't find it. Anyway, he says, even if you are not very good looking by nature, when you meditate, you will become much more attractive. Why do you grimace at that? So it's not actually unreasonable. He's not saying, you're going to look like a film star, but you will be more attractive through your physical presence and physical grace because of what meditation is doing in transforming your mind. And we all see this. There are some people, their smile and their way of being is really attractive, even though they're very ordinary looking people. But there's something, a light within them, a charm, a smiling, their good nature is communicated, through the language of the body, which is how we first of all see and read each other. So a spiritual path today, I think, has to take account of this physical dimension as well as the mental, the psychological dimension. But a spiritual path is a spiritual path. It is about opening up, developing, and expanding ourselves in the spiritual dimension. And I think the working model that we start from makes a big deal of difference to the kind of practice we take up and how we approach our meditation. Jesus was seen in his time both as a healer, physical healer, and a teacher of wisdom. So you could say that the mystical and the medical were combined. And this incarnational understanding of the spiritual dimension of human life is very clearly expressed in the early Christian writers, the fathers of the church. Clement of Alexandria speaks about Jesus as the all-healing physician, the holy charmer of the sick soul. He says that salvation, meaning the word salvation, of course, means health or healing or coming to wholeness. Salvation is theosis. Theosis is the Greek word that means divinization. God became human so that human beings might become God, is the refrain of the early Christian church. This was their wonder at what was being revealed and what they were discovering about the meaning of Christ. That our purpose in life is to be divinized. And the divinization process is related to the vision of God. Seeing God, as Jesus says in the Beatitudes, because we have a pure heart. happy are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. So this idea of seeing God, very central, vision of God to Christian spirituality, Christian thought as well in the early church. And clearly that is very much related to our spirituality, to our prayer. Because it is in our prayer, in our meditation, in the prayer of the heart, that we purify the heart. That we come, in other words, to see things as they really are. And that is much more rare than we think. Because we usually don't see things as they are, we see things as they appear, or we see things as we think they should be, or as we think they are, through the filters and the desires of our own minds. So purifying the heart for the early Christians was precisely the work of prayer, and it was precisely the work of disillusionment, of basically shattering, dissolving, getting rid of the illusions which hold us back from this vision of God, this vision of reality. So these little haikus are all about these little moments of pure vision. But you don't have to write, when I saw this duck turn upside down in the lake this morning, the duck was God. Or, God helped me to see. You don't have to put the word God in there at all. In fact, if you put the word God in there, it would overload the poem completely. It becomes a commentary, it becomes an idea. So forget about God. The vision of God is not about thinking about God. And that's a big challenge, I think, to many religious people, because they think that prayer is about thinking about God, speaking to God, imagining God, asking God for things, praising God, doing it all in a conscious way, God-centered. So it's very difficult for them, sometimes for religious people, sincere and devout religious people, to get the meaning of the contemplative dimension of prayer. They even get suspicious of it, and there's been a lot of suspicion about contemplation throughout the history of the church. Even at the time of Jesus, that's the meaning of the story of Martha and Mary. Jesus defends the contemplative Mary against the hyperactive and stressed out Martha. So this is nothing new. This is in the Gospel of Luke. So this purifying of the heart is what allows us to see God. But remember what St. Paul said this morning about knowing as I am known, knowing as well as I am known. In the spiritual dimension, in the spiritual experience, the subject and the object are one. In other words, the person who's looking and the thing that they're looking at are one. It's not what our normal way of looking at something. The vision of God is not looking at God, it's seeing God. Jesus doesn't say, happy are the pure of heart, for they shall look at God. The seeing of God is only possible in this experience of a union, if you like, in which we know that we are known, or we see that we are seen. And the most exhilarating and revealing experience of that in life is love. And you know that you are known, and you know the one who knows you, and so this is the heart of theosis, of divinization. We are divinized within this seeing of God. Doesn't mean we are God, but it means we, in a real sense, become God. We're not thinking about God, asking God for things. We're not objectifying God. We're not dramatizing God, which is what religious people usually do. We dramatize God, we create God into this character, this actor in the world who is angry with us, who is threatening us, who is doing all sorts of things to us. But all of that is transcended in the work, in the act of contemplation. And for the early Christians, like Clement of Alexandria, this is salvation, this is healing, this is becoming whole. So I think what we call spirituality today is very often a dualistic path that really relates to my body and my mind, but I, which is really my ego, remains at the center of this process, of this experience. I'm watching it, I may be even buying it. Spirituality is big business. I may be buying it, or buying into it, and I'm getting what I want out of it. So there is this danger in modernity, the consumerism, the commodification of everything in modernity, that we turn even spirituality into this basically egocentric activity. And it will take us so far. It may reduce our blood pressure, it may make us calmer and sleep better at night and so on. But in itself, it doesn't open us up to the full wonder of our being that I was talking about yesterday, which leads ultimately to this experience of divinization. So, just as our idea of health in the modern world has been medicalized, after all, we talk about health care, the provision of health care. So it's giving health. A doctor friend of mine said, so what do I do when this man comes into my surgery, my surgery? He's overweight, he's smoking, he's drinking far too much, he's eating badly, and his whole regime of life is desperately self-destructive and unhealthy. And this man says to me, Doctor, I'm not feeling very well. Can you give me something? Can you give me health? I don't want to change. I can't give up cigarettes, I can't give up drink, I can't start eating properly, but you just give me something to make me feel better. He said, what do I do? He said, out of compassion, the doctors will usually give them something. At huge expense to the public purse, probably. Will give them something just to make them feel that they're doing something. But they know, the doctors know perfectly well, that it's completely useless unless that person changes. And what's going to change them? It's a change of mind. It's not an injection from the outside that's going to change them. And so we have medicalized the idea of health. Health is something that medicine provides. Health provision, popping a pill. And this can easily spill over into our understanding of spirituality as if it were a system of techniques external to ourselves, externally applied, that don't require much deep, personal or radical conversion. In other words, you can get enlightenment, but you don't actually have to change very much. But that isn't the wisdom of our great traditions. which is that anything that can be called a spiritual path must be a path of conversion, of metanoia. And that is the spiritual path. The conversion, the metanoia, the changing of the mind, your whole nature thus transformed, that your minds be remade. This is the spiritual path. And the key to that healing, to that full integration of the body and mind and spirit, the key is attention. So we'll look a little more detail tomorrow at this work of attention. There's a great sentence, a two-word sentence in Simon Weil, which is, attention purifies. When we pay attention to something, we are purifying our mind. We're purifying our consciousness, our heart. Now, sometimes attention is easy. Sometimes it's more difficult. But it is always work. It's a good work. And we understand meditation best, I think, as this work of attention, or prayer itself. The essence of prayer is attention.